Coming up on this week's episode of The Catching Pen, it's a massive week in Sydney as we continue the countdown to the TAB $1 Million Chase. Racing Queensland's Brenton Scott joins the panel to discuss confirmed plans for a new track in the Sunshine State. And we look ahead to the other feature events coming up around the nation.
Welcome along to another episode of The Catching Pen. We'll look back over all the action, primarily from Wentworth Park, where the city qualifies for the MDC, and of course look forward to the semi-finals of said race coming up this weekend. The man that'll be calling all the actions to my left, Matty Jackson. A lot to look forward to with a big double-header at Wenny this weekend, mate.
Yeah, can't wait. It's going to be a huge night on Friday night with of course, the semis of the TAB $1 Million Chase, and then, of course, 3 heats of the Sydney Cup as well, where we see the national distance champ, Super Estrella, fresh off a track record run, strut her stuff there. Yep. So can't wait for the weekend.
Anything away from the track catch your action over the weekend?
Not too much. Maybe the F1 sat up to watch that, and a little bit disappointed in the finale, yes, finishing behind a safety car, but a pretty quiet weekend. I must admit the Cats didn't play because they had earned the week off, so yeah, this weekend will be huge, not only on the Greyhound track calling at Wenny Park, but watching the Cats on Friday night, hopefully progressing to an AFL Grand Final.
Absolutely. No, this man will be hoping for the same sort of result for his team, no doubt. It was up punching above his weight in Sydney Town last weekend and back for the doubleheader this week. Patch, welcome along.
Great to be back, Wiz, and you're right, fingers crossed for the Swannies to get through and the Cats, and I tell you what, Jacko and I aren't going to talk next week if both our mobs get through, but it's great to be up there. The weather was perfect. I mean, I didn't know it stopped raining up there this time of year, but it was just dead set magic. But great night at Wenny. Obviously this week it goes up a gear, the MDC semis, and just like all the majors throughout the year, the sort of the last chance to make your way into the final. There's no better and high pressure racing than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, no one cares about what I did over the weekend. But one thing I did want to raise was the UFC, and I don't know how many fans of UFC are out there, but it's not necessarily sport related. I just think there's a bit of a lesson in the way they conduct their affairs, the UFC, that I think every business, not just businesses in the sporting codes, can learn from. 24 hours out from their main event, one of the headline acts failed the weigh-in. Basically, they had to rearrange the entire card, which they did in 24 hours, basically so they could deliver on an outstanding customer, experience for all the people that have taken the effort to buy the tickets, fly there, pay for their hotel rooms, so as to not disappoint those people first and foremost, but to keep the show going. I just think there's a good lesson to be learnt for everyone that runs a business out there, to be fair. Yeah,
absolutely. Dana White, who runs the UFC, does an incredible job, and wasn't only the rearrangement of the fights due to one of the headline acts not making the weight. There was a lot more that went on behind the scenes. There was a press conference that had been called off the day before due to some backstage shenanigans. Yes, that got pretty hairy, and they didn't have enough security to be able to handle what was going on backstage. So it's not like the wrestling where it's all scripted and whatnot. This is real life for them.
And it's not like a lot of the other sports as well, where they have to worry about political correctness too much, because let's face it, it's two blokes getting in a cage bashing the Christ out of one another, so we don't have to worry about the airs and graces. Anyway, let's get into the Greyhound stuff. Here's the news.
The Catching Pen News is brought to you by Darwin Greyhounds, racing every Sunday and selected Wednesdays.
First topic up for chat is the announcement that Greyhound Racing New South Wales have announced a $2.1 million prize money boost. That was announced by the new CEO, Rob McCauley. Starting October 1, they'll be adding fourth prize money at all race meetings, as well as increasing the travel subsidies. So again, further support for people in the industry in New South Wales, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Paying to fourth will just, I suppose, give that added attraction to participants to race their greyhounds, and also the travel subsidies as well. And also off the back of that $2.1 million prize money boost, we saw a couple of feature races down at Goulburn that have had injections of prize money. The Goulburn Cup up 15,000 to 40,000, and the Fireball 10,000 to 25,000. So it's certainly moving along in the right way, greyhound racing here in New South Wales, and just an extra little carrot for participants.
All right, second news item, and I won't invite comment from the boys here because we do have a guest a little bit later on to expand on this, but the Queensland Government have given approval to the development. Well, it's been granted development approval in any case for the new track out at Yamanto. It was announced by Grace, the Minister for Education, Industrial Relations and Racing up there in Queensland. Mooted to start works on that next year. Facility looking to create about 500 jobs in the local area. So, as I said, we'll have a guest to come on and expand upon that in a few moments, so we won't go too much further into that, but again, great news for participants in Queensland. Not so good news, the last topic in any case, a little bit of sadness centring around the untimely demise of Fabregas, who died just short of his 12th birthday. I might come to you for comment here, Pat. You would have seen plenty of him in his very, very short racing career. A greyhound who side the Group 1 winners Dundee Osprey, No Donuts, as well as super greyhounds like Aston Bolero, Chasing Crackers, Kuta Mayhem, She's Gifted, Falcon's Fury, and of course the freight train himself, Pindari Express, Patch.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when I first started getting interested in, I guess, involved in racing, he was just starting to go through his tear and really go on that fierce run through the tail end of 2012, where he went down to Hobart, he won that national sprint, and probably a shame we didn't see him get to race through the October, November with all the feature events during that period of time. But either way, obviously a gun from a racing point of view. Again, would have liked to have seen a lot more from him, but in the end, he went straight to start, and as you elaborated on, Wiz, he's been one of the better stud dogs we've seen in recent years, and he's produced some absolute rockets. So, yeah, thoughts are with the whole Westerveld family, and not only Paul, who stood him at stud, but also bred him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the run of the week. We venture to South Australia. This is one of the heats of the Derby, and in private, Patch, you and I have been waxing lyrical about this dog's potential. Hector Fawley, he was an outstanding 30 and 30 winner the week before, but wow, this was some effort.
Well, his second half of the race last week was really big, and I'll tell you what, he faced a lot more adversity this time around, and as we said last week, he just had no right to win. In the field he was in, the position he was in, and to really charge in that last 30, 40 metres was massive. So, look, from day one, he's looked to be a talented pup, and Ian Cockrell's got him going through the ranks nicely as well. He's stood up the City Racing. He's now in a feature final and performing like that, and showing the ticker he has. He's a serious type. Yeah,
he certainly is, and that's quite a strong South Australian Derby final. I'd suggest possibly the strongest one we've had for a few years, and that's I think that's absolutely confirmed by the fact a dog like Columbus Manelli, $16. The honourable mention, we go to the Richmond Straight Track Saturday morning to see Mr. America break the track record there, Jacko. He had his box, 17:11. As you can see, beautiful conditions. I'd say they had a little bit of a tailwind. That's not to take away from Mr. America, but he didn't all of a sudden become 3/10 quicker overnight.
Yeah, no, he didn't. But in saying that, he probably got the start.
A1, didn't he?
Yeah, he got it better than probably what he has been jumping of recent times. We know how fast he is. And with all the other guns, straight track sprinters in Hillsville on Sunday for their cup, he was left up there by himself, and he produced a big win, and I believe now is off to Queensland for the Cabalaba Cup, and I know Sacred Stance is going to be heading up that way as well, so that shapes up to be a terrific clash between those two again.
Indicative of what we've been speaking about the last couple of weeks, how strong straight racing is at the moment. That Capalaba Cup, I mean, on the back of arguably one of the best Hillsville Cups of all time, this race at Capalaba now with Mr. America coming back there, obviously to face some of the foes from Hillsville, plus some of the other up-and-comers from Queensland. We're going to touch on an outstanding performance at Capalaba there last Sunday as well, a little bit later on in the show. To take us to a break, our kennel keeper this week, very short story about this one. It's good because it involves our tears, but Jared Daffy got the tip for this dog about, I don't know, would have been about 7 or 8 weeks ago. Jacko was the dog's first start in any case, wasn't it, at Horsham? I think went up about $8, backed into start about 6-4, got rolled, has not been beaten since. 29.96, an awesome win on Saturday night.
Barbara Allen, Golden Ratio coming off the back straight, and Baby JC well clear, 6 or 8 out in front. Kanji Victory followed for the back then by Kanji Exiled, and a gap in the race into Pirates Patch, but it's going to be Baby JC winning by about 8.
Feature Racing ventured to Townsville on Friday for the Cup at Group 3 level. Gemma Daly looked to have the race at her mercy, but it was the local hope that saluted for Harold Hovey. A son of My Redeemer and Fancy Dancer, Redemption Day has now won 9 of his 17 starts with more than $60,000 in the bank.
It leads by 8 to the corner. In second place, Shay, then followed by up on the inside was Zahara Sky. But up the straight, it's a local cup. Redemption Day for Harold Hovey, the Magic Man wins.
And a great training performance as well by Harold Hovey. I'll come to you for comment here, Patch. That dog had only had 3 runs back from quite a long spell. He kicked off his career with a real blaze of glory, but yeah, local victory, no doubt they partied hard.
Yeah, no two ways about that. Had some time off between May and August, and obviously come back in ripping order and started off his career really well up there at Ipswich, and converts that into a feature win up there at Group 3 level. And of course, out of the Dennis Barnes line, the Nengar line, if people know it a bit better from that point of view, and stretches as far as we know a couple of generations ago as She's a Pearl. So it's a line that keeps on producing.
All right, that brings us to our first guest. We've got the Strategic and Development Manager, Brenton Scott from Racing Queensland, joining us on the back of that fantastic news that we mentioned in the news with the approval being given for the new track at Yamano. Thanks for joining us, Brenton.
Thank you.
I'll be the Grinch. I'll start off with the nasty question. I've got the press release dated 15th of March 2014 in front of me here, Brenton. New Greyhound racing track at Logan gets the green light. Works to commence 2 months later in May of that year. A lot of participants are obviously highly sceptical given our history. Why is it going to be different for us this year?
Yeah, I think I can understand some of that, and there's been earlier assurances before that around the replacement of the Gold Coast track. The difference here is this is a project that I think has met a number of milestones that simply haven't been in place before. Obviously, it's passed a business case at government level, and obviously now state planning approval, and I think we can consider that a milestone that's extremely unique. It must provide a lot of satisfaction to people. Clearly, participants have been looking for certainty around Southeast Queensland racing, what it's going to look like. They now know from the middle of 2024 what it does look like. To the board and management of RQ, total commitment to this project, so a lot of satisfaction there. And then the groups like the Brisbane Greyhound Racing Club and the Ipswich Greyhound Racing Club, the operations of which will co-locate to this facility. They've embraced it from day one, really put their support behind everything that's been progressed to this point. So a lot of shoulders have pushed in the one direction here. This is a great outcome. It is a milestone point, and it's a point for celebration.
All right, well, that brings us...
And one thing more, I think it does this. It reinforces once and for all the level of support that the Queensland government is prepared to throw behind the racing industry, and specifically the greyhound industry.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. Well, let's have a look at what the track will look like, of course, because we've got some designs, and this will be the first time that we've been able to park our eyes over these. Of course, that's just showing the location of the track with relation to Ipswich and, of course, Brisbane's to the east, of course. Just talk us through the process, the design process, if you can, Brett, and in particular, if you could just touch on the industry-focused vet clinic that's going to be part of this as well.
Sure. Look, we have undertook a lot of consultation in this process, and obviously the racing infrastructure to some degree speaks for itself. But I think there was 4 things that we wanted: 3 tracks. And for those 3 tracks, in the traditional form, to provide the safest possible form of racing, for the integrity and animal care standards to be of the highest possible standards, and for the facility to deliver a destination facility in terms of participants. Now, that has sort of entailed that we needed to get the location right. We needed to get the track layout right, and with all of that comes racing and the prospects of injury and so forth. And so it was very much clear throughout the consultation process that we needed to have first-class veterinary support here. And so The internal facilities will allow for triaging of greyhounds in the veterinary facilities on an immediate basis.
Yep.
There'll be a clinic there for the more substantial injuries, and then we'll have a strong relationship with orthopaedic specialists and so forth from that point. So we would argue that we've got a facility that is going to minimise injuries in the first place, because race safety and design's been at the forefront of everything that we've done to this point. But if there is injuries, then the facilities that are there will be immediate and will be best in class.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, because I know it is one of the frustrations of participants, certainly in this state in any case. Maddie?
As far as the location of the facility, we saw with the flooding of Albion Park earlier in the year, Ipswich took a lot of those meetings on. Was that something that played into the process, or was that decision already made on moving out towards Ipswich? And what was the reason behind going out there and not, say, somewhere closer to Brisbane?
Well, there were a lot of things considered, but ultimately, I think at one point there were 20 pieces of land under some form of consideration, and there were various points of assessment to that. Ultimately, this venue came up best in terms of its location, its capacity to provide the three forms of racing, its near proximity to a community, the demographic of which is very well connected to greyhound racing, and importantly, this is very close to large amounts of space used by greyhound trainers at the current time. So they'll be able to have a facility that has intense levels of racing in near proximity, affordable land, and a highly efficient facility that will be able to provide all of those principles of top-class animal care, best-in-class integrity, safe racing, and because of its efficiency, maximise prize money. So all of those were part of the mix that determined the location.
And Brendan, you mentioned about some of the milestones that the project has met. What were some of the leading factors there? Is it the detail of the plan? Is it the attitude of the current government, or the momentum the sport has really created from COVID, or just a combination of the whole thing?
Look, I think the government's support's been there from day one. The commitment of Racing Queensland and the club have been to ensure that Southeast Queensland racing has certainty and a long-term plan in place. So that was part and parcel, central, if you like, to the business plan that was developed in 2019. That business plan was sufficient for the government to justify the funding levels which were announced late in 2019, and since then we've gone through a complex state planning process that's involved heavy levels of consultation both with internal and external stakeholders, and again we've delivered up as a result of that process across those four principles of what type of racing infrastructure do we want, how can we deliver race safety, animal care, and again a destination facility for the participants and racing fans.
I think everyone involved needs a big pat on the back to getting it at the point it is at the moment. And obviously there's a similar situation in Tasmania at the moment, Brenton. Not that you're going to speak on their behalf, of course, but do you think this political movement and support up there in Queensland has the potential to have a flow-on effect across the country, in particular in Tasmania?
I think every state has worked with both with harmony and in a spirit of collaboration since 2017. We obviously got a wake-up call in that 2015-16 period. Certainly this track has come together piggybacking on the work of other jurisdictions and other states, and in recent days there's been reach outs from Tasmanian authorities as to how they can work with us and build upon what we're doing as they go forward. So yes, there is a unification Australia-wide, and it's about providing long-term sustainability for our industry. So absolutely the collaboration will continue, and hopefully that does influence government decision making.
And now that the government has ticked off on this, what's the timeline progressing forward from now? When will soil get turned over, and then when can we expect to see these tracks built and be racing on?
Yep, we expect to commence civil works either late this year or very early in the following year. Procurement and contracting processes will commence in a matter of weeks. And at this stage, though, with any level of construction of the size of this, there's some risk with those timelines, but we are currently targeting the middle of 2024 for the commencement of racing.
A lighter point of view, I know it's a long way probably down the path, but the name of the track, are we going to see it called Great to Brisbane, or is there a bit of discussion and I guess voting and some brainstorming about what name it's going to end up being? Yeah,
look, Greater Brisbane Greyhound Centre was the brand that was developed as we commenced considerations. It allowed people to understand that this was about a greater territory than either Ipswich or purely metropolitan racing. But the facility will be progressed with an entirely new brand. We've invested heavily in that. We understand the importance of that particular piece of work, and that's well advanced, and I'd expect positive announcements in that regard, Patch, in coming weeks.
All right, thanks for coming on, Brenton. I'm sure everyone out there, in particular Queensland, but Australia-wide, will be absolutely agog with not only your work, but the rest of your team's work behind the scenes. And and we anxiously await, obviously, the first sort of dirt being turned, Brenton, and hopefully in a couple of years' time we're up there enjoying ourselves at the new track. Yeah,
pleasure to have been here, and just to be great to be part of this project. It is a game changer. It fully delivers up in what we have provided to the community in terms of a general statement over the past 5 years. This is about safe racing, animal care at the epicentre, and a project that, as I've said before, will ensure the long-term sustainability of the sport.
Outstanding. All right, so there's Brenton Scott, who has delighted all of us with some outstanding news today. Now, to take us to a break, I did allude to a fantastic race at Capalaba last Sunday that could have some Capalaba Cup implications. This was the final of the Young Guns. The two greyhounds in question are drawn boxes 1 and 3 here. Black Comanche, who you'd have heard ad nauseum spoken about on this show, a dog with a 1930 PB. Takes on Beck and Call, a dog who we did make run of the week going back a couple of months or so ago, and he gives Black Comanche a start and a beating.
Sam pushing up there was Beck and Call trying to get to the outside, together with Where's the Fort, Selwood Hayes. Just in front, Black Comanche, Beck and Call. Here's the race. Beck and Call, Black Comanche, Beck and Call hit the lead. Beck and Call and knows Black Comanche.
The semi-finalists for the TAB $1 Million Chase are all locked in, and the stage is set for an epic showdown at Wentworth Park this Friday. The winners progressing through to the 7-figure showpiece. John and Minnie Finn have been having an incredible run in recent months, and it continued over the weekend with stayer turned sprinter Zipping Alabama clocking best of meeting figures.
And Zipping Alabama got right up on the rails. She pounced on the front and she exploded away. Zipping Alabama careers away up the straight and won it by 8.
Yeah, clearly the quickest qualifier from the city qualifiers in any case on Saturday night at Wentworth Park was Zipping Alabama, and Jacko, she's been a bit of a revelation at past 2 starts, primarily down to her better beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been the key to her, is she's jumping a lot cleaner. Still not brilliantly, but I don't think she's ever going to jump brilliantly, but she's been landing sort of third on the rail, and from there, when she's in front down the back, there's not too many dogs in Australia that will get close to her late over 500 metres, particularly if she's coming home in 11:50 odd like she has been. So she's come up with box 3 on Friday night, so she's got to be another winning chance, I would have thought then.
For sure. She's plenty short enough in the all-in. Let's have a look at that market. She's a Pearl has shortened from, I believe she got out to as much as $7, I was told last week, but there she is anyway at $5 ahead of Good Odds Cash, $7.50. Mortified's now got in plenty short enough, and Plaintiff, we've mentioned ad nauseum, it's been $31 into his current quote of $11. A few names there on that page. none of those really interest me, I've got to say, although I did have something on Coast Model very early days in the race. McInerney's been going all right. He might make some appeal, as might Shipwreck, but there they all are. Some reservation about a few of these going around. Ibrox Wildfire's $51, Jacko. I took 31 last week. I'm going to have to go back and have a little bit more on at the 51 because I think she's well drawn.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's overs for me.
Do that before this goes to air.
And I think the point with looking at that all-in market is if you go through the semis this week and really work out who you think can win the race, that's where you might be able to find some value. Like we both just said off air, we think Ibrox Wildfire's a real live chance in the semi. So if she wins, she's not going to be $51 in the final, I wouldn't have thought.
Absolutely not. Let's go back and have a look at some of the action from last Saturday night. And first one I'm going to have a look at is She's a Pearl's win here. The dog in the checks, He's on Fire, really gives her... Well, first of all, she ran into the white shortly after the start. The checks came out and whacked her, and then the white turned her sideways there. So whilst I can only speak honestly about her, I was not impressed with her run at Goulburn. I was amazingly impressed by this, Jacko. She really worked hard. In the end, the 29.86 slightly irrelevant, but geez, you could easily cut her some slack for probably 3/10 there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was probably a little different to you in regards to Goulburn. I didn't think she went that bad. She just didn't have any clear room after the slow start, but after she got the check, she was able to finish it off very well. So I didn't think she went that bad, but yeah, she was outstanding the other night. And we talked about it off air. The fact that she got that heavy bump at the first corner and Embrace, a Group 1 winner, had got the unimpeded run sort of coming around her, but couldn't get past, and then she ran away from her late. So yeah, she was terrific. First run at 500 for around 4 months, so she'll improve greatly off that. The query for her going into the semi is she's up against He's on Fire again, who is drawn to her inside, so will he create that issue for her at the start?
Zippy Tesla's been in just about career best form. His win was typical of his run style patch. He made good use of a low draw, and that, I guess, has been a bit of a highlight of some of his recent form. He's not getting as far back.
Yeah, exactly right. I think even when he had that awkward draw before he went up there to Sydney at Sandown, he won that free-for-all against Emron Boy. He had box 6 and he found himself in a beautiful position. So he's just a genuine race dog, and he's got the biggest ticker of all time. And as I think you said on Saturday night, he's one of the more admirable dogs across the country. He's strong, he's fast, you just know what you're going to get from him. So he's got an awkward draw in his semi-final. He's got Zippy Kyrgios in the race as well. But I mean, as a respect point of view, he's one of my favourites. How can you not like one like him who gives his all week to week and puts on a show? So he was good last Saturday night, and fingers crossed from a Victorian point of view, at least he can go well again this week.
Yeah, well said, Pat. He's got a heart as big as himself, Zippy Tesla. Our second guest on the show this week is a man who's not, won't be foreign to anyone. We've had him on here 1,000 times. Steve Withers, who produced Panama Pepper to win his way through to the semis last Saturday night. Thanks for joining us, Steve. What'd you make of the win there on Saturday night? Was typically tradesman-like. I think watching from the lateral, you won't see a lot of the interference that he did suffer. Going to the back straight the final occasion, ran into the leader, lost a lot of momentum there, and then down the home straight as well. They had a little bit of a bit of argy-bargy, he and the leader, but you must have been happy with the performance.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. Yeah, I guess on surface value at first look, it wasn't that impressive on the clock and even visually, but we know Pepper's a really fast dog. It was an unusual week for him. We had to back up quickly out of the Richmond final where he didn't get through and have a look at Wentworth Park. And yeah, I think I can find a few reasons why the run can improve a lot this week. We know he's fast. If he gets an opportunity this week, he's capable of being an impact in the series.
Now, Steve, immediately post-race, how were the emotions? We saw he was luckless at Richmond when it looked like he was going to qualify for sure and certain, but alas, he just got that little check on the home turn, didn't make it through. A lot of relief to have got through there on Saturday night at Weddy Park.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to get rolled out of these series. You know, there's good dogs everywhere, and it's racing. One little bump here and there can take away opportunity, and it's all over. So, number one, to be sitting nice and comfy up in the first two down the back straight, it was a good feeling that we were back on track. Yeah, not having the benefit of a close look at replays at the time during the race, wondering why he ducked out on the first corner and how he struggled on the clock, but yeah, closer look through the week, there's enough justification there to say that he's good to race this week.
And Steve, talk us through his personality and how he handles things, because he's been travelling over the past few months. He's been the bulk of his career racing on his home deck over there in the West. This will be his 4th start in a row away from home. Is he handling it perfectly? You got no concerns about the way that he's backing up and getting back on his bike and back to an interstate track?
Yeah, look, he's a different sort of an operator. He's all about one thing, and that's just racing and running. He doesn't have a lot of emotions, except for at a racetrack. He's a race dog. He likes it. He's not bothered at all. As long as there's something he can run and chase, he's a happy dog.
And we know through the Tommy Shelby campaign, Steve, it was an absolute roller coaster. And now with Panama Pepper, you're a similar ownership group, but a couple of additions as well, and especially of pretty high profile. Talk us through who's a part of it.
Yeah, well, we might have popped into a really lucky little trend here that first-time owners seem to bring a fair bit of luck into dogs. So Leia Ernest is obviously part of the broadcasting in Western Australia, and it's been with Greyhounds WA, and it's her dog. It's her first dog. So she's having a lucky ride. And yeah, he's a very different dog to Tommy, and there'll only ever be one Tommy. He's a very special dog in our heart and in our place and our home. So, but Pepper's Pepper. He's unique in his own ways, and you can't help but respect him as well.
Special dog, to say the least, the champ Tommy Shelby, and you've had some sort of heavy involvement in the MDC of years gone by, Steve. Back in 2020, your boy jumped from box number 8, was it? And he just couldn't carve across. It was still a big effort to run 3rd, but I guess in memories of this night and generally, how is he going, and especially from a stud point of view?
Yeah, it was an amazing night. That was very early in the tour with Tommy. He was just sort of making his way through and emerging on the national scene at that stage. So the excitement levels were amazing, as they are at the moment. Just being in a semi-final and having some chance, it's very exciting. His stud career has been great. He's been really well patronaged early in his career. His eldest pups are 14, 15 months old. There's about 110 litters out there on the ground, and the first ones are educating. And yeah, it's very exciting stuff. The next 6 months are huge.
Now, from Tommy Shelby back to Panama Pepper, and looking forward to the semis this week. You've come up in heat number 1. You've drawn box 8. Have you been able to have a look at the field, and if so, what are your initial thoughts on his chances on Friday night? And is drawing that first semi-final an advantage for him rather than waiting all night to race?
Yeah, look, I haven't had a good look at the field just yet. I've only just picked up the phone. I threw it out through the window, and I've just come down the park here to try and find it. I spat a bit of a dummy, and box 8, it's not really ideal. It really lowers your chances to recover if you make a mistake. And, you know, there's good dogs. Every dog in these, at this stage of the competition, they've all won their way through. So it's very, very competitive. Yeah, look, it is what it is. He's not going to get knocked over from his outside. He's a very fast dog once he's on the ground and he's running. So if he gets his first step right, it's probably not much different to every other box. If you make a mistake, you're in big trouble. If you get it right, you're going to make your own luck, and yeah, your chances are going to come.
Mate, you guys got a pretty good handle on the form as well, so certainly respect your opinion and be interested in your opinion on the strength of racing in WA at the moment. I've sort of made mention on this show at the moment, the big 4, I guess, yourself, Throttle, Vice Grip and Momentum seem to be just cutting us way through the big races over there, and we saw Vice Grip win again on the weekend. We've seen him compete well over here, Panama over here. You know, the other dogs, Throttle and Momentum, not so much, but you know, do you think they would be very competitive over here?
Oh, no doubt at all. Look, we sort of broke ground on it with Tommy when we were floating around, but before that there was dogs like West on Augie and Premium Share, so it's very well proven now that if you run time and stand up to the competitive racing in Perth, you'll stand up anywhere on the East Coast. The depth is good down through the young dogs and novices. We don't have the huge population and numbers as what New South Wales and Victoria, Queensland do, but there's no doubt per capita the quality there is just fantastic. And yeah, top grade racing is top grade racing. Those other dogs that you mentioned there, they could easily compete in any of the group races over here.
Yeah, certainly. Well, with a bit of luck, we might see them in Melbourne in any case. Mate, thanks for your time. You're always very, very good with us here in the media, and all the best on the weekend.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, to get us to a break, the Every Dog Has Its Day segment, one of our favourites on this show, and we did mention the UFC off the top, Jacko, so a little bit of synergy, and you could also make a correlation between the name of this dog and the way this race is run. But Jorge, or better known as Masvidal, brings up his first win at start 50 at Richmond.
Away fairly, wanting to get up the track, that Chronic Wave bring good cover for it, and My Luck Many. They both come through now to take over. My Luck Many hampering the favourite Albury Urban halfway up, but they're still up there together. Took it right to the outside the track. Now Mini Rock getting up there as well, and coming through Mass Vital did get his day, and Mass Vital at start number 50.
We start this week's wrap in the Festival State, where the TAB Adelaide Cup Carnival commenced last Thursday with heats of the Oaks and Derby. Well-credentialed Victorian youngster Yahiro Bale claimed time honours across the series, bringing up win 8 at start 19 in a heat of the Oaks for trainer Danny Gibbons.
Dory splice, but Yahiro Bale, the shorty, took off and got clear. Agent 4 second at the moment, getting past Ed Zipping Daria, but too good here. Yahiro Bale opening up and goes on to win by nearly 4 in the end, Yahiro Bale.
Next, it's off to Victoria on Saturday night for the Top Cat Video Cup at the Meadows. It was a sentimental victory for Team Britain, Rob's son Tim landing his first group win with first picked. By Benally out of Arelda Bale, a sister to champion Fanta Bale. Both her parents were trained by Rob, who owns the 4-time winner.
Elfie Moon the leader, leading by 2 over Draco Bale and Plate Nice third, followed by first picked about 3 lengths away, then Aston Velvet, Gypsy Wong, followed by Bex Manelli and Boom Lateral coming off the back straight. It's Elfie Moon still the leader, 2 out in front over Draco Bale. They were followed then by first picked on the outside, running on pretty well into the straight. It's Elfie Moon the leader, coming down the outside as first picked with a strong run. First picked hit the front, won the Top Cat.
Ready. On the same night, we venture west for the spring gift at Cannington. It was a welcome return to form for Perth Cup champ Vice Griff, bringing up his first victory since April and taking his career earnings to over $400,000.
Hinto out wider on the track was Archibald, then followed by Yahoo Serious, Gangnam Manelli. Last of all was Jimmy's Decision off the back, and Vice Grip worked to the lead. In second place was Amplified Momentum, then followed by Yahoo Serious. Around the corner though, Vice Grip in front, and Vice Grip for Adam Smithson takes out the spring gift.
And finally on Sunday, it was back to Victoria for a thrilling edition of the Group 2 Healesville Cup, taken out by the only interstate raider, Sacred Stance, who brought up win 12 at start 18.
Bale, Sacred Stance now went through with Action Girl. They're a length to Quinlan Bale. It's Sacred Stance in front, clings on and wins.
Yeah, outstanding field went around there at Healesville on Sunday, and look, I might be slightly biased here, but an outstanding performance by Sacred Stance. You can watch the replay yourself and draw your own conclusion, but the first half of the race, all he wanted to do was clatter and bang into the dogs outside of him. When he finally shook loose, he broke clear long enough to just hold off Quinlan Bale, who was backed as though he was unbeatable, but the winner was outstanding.
Yeah, and that's pretty much going back to what you said with She's a Pearl. The time becomes irrelevant. It's more the manner in which he won, and yeah, he's a genuine superstar, straight track sprinter, and he proved that last Sunday.
Yeah, Patch, easy enough for me to say, but you know, it's been spoken about in circles all week that it was one of the strongest Healesville Cups of all time. Would you agree with that rating?
Absolutely. I think once we start looking at dogs like Typhoon Sammy and Ferdinand Boy at the sort of odds they were, the depth speaks for itself. I think not only the best Healesville Cup we've seen, but maybe the best straight track race and field that we've seen in the sport. And what a good-looking operator Sacred Stance is. I've been involved in a couple of chats over the weekend that say what a grouse-looking dog he is, and geez, didn't he live it up post-race? There was some terrific images come out of him at home and kicking back and enjoying everything it's all about, boys. So he's an absolute rocket, no two ways about that. And yeah, to pick up a big feature, certainly a feather in his cap, and you think it might be the last, that's for sure.
No, I'd say he's the Brad Pitt of greyhound racing, Jacko. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I will agree. I was actually going to use the analogy of So You Think, of like just this beast, a magnificent looking racehorse who translated that to on-track performance. Yeah, he's exactly like that. And I chatted with Michelle Sultana this morning, and she said the amount of people that say to her just how pretty of a dog he is. And yeah, the proof was in the pudding.
Pretty ones aren't normally that fast either, Jacko, which we know with the horses. They always say the 4 white legs, let them go. But another great advertisement for his sire, Beast Unleashed, who doesn't have that many litters on the ground. He's got a dog of Sacred Stances ilk and Mr. Audacious. So, yeah, he's absolutely airborne, the Beast at stud. The other feature racing we saw was from Adelaide well, not over the weekend, but it was on Thursday night with the heats of the Derby and the Oaks. And we spoke obviously about Hector Fawley's win earlier, and we just watched the win of Yahiro Bale, Patch. The marker would indicate that this is one of the more open feature races that we've seen this year.
Yeah, it is, and I think I agree with that. I mean, you look at the top two, Yahiro Bale and Ava Blazer, while they were pretty good in qualifying for the final, they both didn't time the start as well as what they can, particularly Ava Blazer. So they've got room for improvement, as good as they were in their heat.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at the win here of Miss Scallywagon. It's one of the things I mentioned because I did the late mail on Thursday, Jacko, that quite often when we see these interstate derbies and Oaks series, your eyes are automatically drawn to the dogs from either Victoria or New South Wales just because of the nature of their form. But the South Australian form, given obviously their experience at the track, the other factor they don't have to travel, it stood up in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I guess the big thing is they've got that experience of racing there week in, week out, and it is difficult when you're going to a new state like Victorians heading to South Australia and New South Wales dogs going over there to, especially with the starting box is slightly different everywhere. So start's so vital, and at that elite level, the start becomes even more important because there can be trouble at the first corner. So to have that advantage, I suppose, of racing there week in, week out certainly helps. But just having a look at that market, and Yahiro Bale's obviously favourite. McKeon Bale was around $7.50. Dan Gibbons, who prepares them both, has come out and said that he thinks McKeon Bale's probably a better chance than Yahiro Bale, but did concede that if Yahiro Bale found the front, they'd probably struggle to run her down.
Yeah. All right. Well, you'll see the Oaks final and the Derby final on Thursday night from Angle Park, as well as a couple of other really interesting runners on that card, one of which is Justice Sort, who's obviously over there on trial for the Adelaide Cup, and by reports he has been trialling the house down since arriving in Adelaide. To get us to a break, it's the gorgeous Liz Whelan with Across the Ditch.
Hi guys, well it was a terrific afternoon of racing at Manorba 2 on Friday afternoon, where we had 3 feature races on the program, including the running of the Federal Morgan at stud feature final over 457 metres. Now, as expected, it was the 2 Lisa Coltrane favourites who battled the race out. Let's check out the replay, and we see Federal Infrared here jumping off box 2, Mustang Charlie jumping off box 5. Neither of them particularly fast away, but both of them getting to their work quickly, and I think it's fair to say that both of these dogs did get their opportunity to win the race. But in the concluding stages, Mustang Charlie here was too big, too strong late, and when I say too big, he's about 8.5 kgs heavier than Federal Infrared, and he's done the job in a very fast 25.63, beating home Federal Infrared by half a length, and she was very game in defeat. And speaking of Federal Infrared, you'll next be able to catch her on Thursday afternoon at Cambridge. She lines up in the last there. And unfortunately for me, my dog 3 Shirt Day has to come up against Federal Infrared in the same race on a Thursday. The other features on Friday afternoon, Typhoon Tim was utterly spectacular for Lisa Collin taking out the sprint feature final. He actually broke the 375 metre track record in winning. He's gone a scintillating 21.02, while the distance feature was taken up by Highview Spud for rising young trainer Sammy Phillips. She does a terrific job with her greyhounds, just has a small team, and she won the Strike Rate Trainer Premiership in the season that has just been. Before we go, I also want to alert you to a potential superstar on the rise down at Christchurch. This is a greyhound by the name of Postman Pat, who made his debut at Addington on Friday afternoon. We'll have a look at the replay. He began pretty well off box 4, and then he just starts to drive away, winning by 6 lengths. He was sent up the $1.20 favourite. And it's fair to say there are plenty of people prepared to take the shorts as well, some massive bets on Postman Pat. Trained by Tony Hart in Canterbury, he is beautifully birded. He's a son of Hooked on Scotch and Birdie team, and he's clocked 17.07 on debut. That's open class territory, and he's actually broken the maiden track record over 295 metres of winning. Looking forward to seeing how this dog progresses in the coming weeks here and Across the Ditch.
Quarter-finals of the Irish Derby were run at Shelbourne Park over the weekend, one of the most impressive winners being Callaway Pro-Am, who registered win 9 at start 12. Running third in the same qualifier was Aussie-owned Explosive Boy, a 23-time winning son of Good News, who is already available to use at stud down under.
Yeah, so quarter-final action there from Shelbourne Park on the weekend. Callaway Pro. I've got to say, Jacko, the first thing that shot into my mind, and I know I just won't let this go, is the restrictions on naming dogs here in Australia. Now, that name wouldn't have got through here in Australia on at least two different bases, Callaway being a brand name and AM's not a word, so you can't make up words apparently. But as we've said before, Jacko, it's not offensive. It's not a bastardisation of Phar Lap or Winx or whatever, and it's not offensive. Let the owners call them what they want. We're trying to bring people in the game to have fun, have a good time. Loosen up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love the name Callaway Pro.
Well, as a golfer, of course you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just rolls off the tongue. It's something that, as you mentioned, it's fun. And it would capture a wider audience as well that would get behind greyhounds with good names. You look at, I know it's a different code, but a harness horse 20 years ago, Christian Cullen, named after one of the great All Blacks, and he turned out to be an absolute superstar. And people loved him for any reason other than the fact that he was a superstar, but the fact that he had that
Brett
name
Lee's
as well.
the obvious example here in Australia, isn't he? Some other news coming out of Ireland, of course, Explosive Boy, and it was mentioned, I think, on the Greyhound Recorder website last week that he will have semen available now for Australian breeders here in Australia, courtesy of the Westervelds. Now, what have we got here? $2,200 his fee has been set at, Patch. Already he's a Group 1 winner of the National Produce, the Select Stakes. He made the final of the National Puppy and arguably the most prestigious race other than the Irish Derby in Ireland, the Con and Anne Kirby Memorial, Patch. He will no doubt attract the eye of astute breeders here in Australia, Patch.
Well, clearly a good dog, and I love the international crossover when it comes to these things, no matter what it is across the world. I think we're a better sport when we're crossing over in all areas, but to be honest, his gut feel he's probably up against it. To me, in my short period of time in the sport, people sort of want a bit of certainty these days about what they're going to get. So I think there might be a bit of a slow start, but as we know, it only takes a litter or two or one good dog to get moving, and then it's a snowball effect from there. So fingers crossed we can get a bit of international blood into the breeding scene over here.
Yeah, look, that might be the case. I mean, it certainly hasn't stopped a lot of the very, very well-performed American sides doing well over the past few years. So we'll anxiously await Explosive Boy's career kicking off here in Australia. Let's get to the hot topic. Probably should have asked Kat a bit more about this before I came on, because I get the feeling, Jacko, that two blokes who aren't on the show came up with this topic actually. Shout out to our man Mulry and our man Daffy. But the topic is, how do we get the best dogs in the best races? I might come to you to kick off this one, Patch, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I guess it gets to a point where there's been a handful of races over the past, say, 24 months where you don't get all the superstars lining up. So to me, it's calendar based, and maybe feature racing has got a bit too big for its own good, where there are sort of lucrative options here, there and everywhere, and people do have that hesitation to take on the really good dogs. So to me, it's calendar based, and I think as soon as these signature and major events start to get in that position where good dogs are starting to go elsewhere, then it erodes that momentum and the design and why these big feature races exist. So we know sport and racing is all built on superstars strutting their stuff and matching and doing that. So I think as a sport, we need to open the door to make the best chance and best opportunity for that to happen. You're going to get Wow She's Fast situations where they just decide not to go, and that's fine. But I think that the best we can do to open up the windows, these big feature races, get the best against the best, that's the best way our sport can handle itself. Yeah, that's a very good point you do make, Patch. I would like to see the elite level races like your Golden Easter Eggs, Australian Cups, $1 Million Chases, Melbourne Cups, maybe spread them out so that you get maybe one every 3 months or so, because even though we're seeing these races at ridiculous amounts of prize money, it's still not getting the best fields coming through. Like you look at this $1 Million Chase and we're not getting Wow She's Fast, who's arguably the number one greyhound
in Victoria coming up, because there's so many more riches on in her home state of Victoria, only just around the corner, so they don't want to take that risk. So maybe if they're spread out a little bit more, it might entice trainers to, with those elite level dogs, to plan programs focusing on the very elite, and then of course the races that are slightly below the top of the tree, they might miss out in the long run, but also they might be able to slot in between races, and if dogs are going well, they still might go there. But it's certainly very tricky, and I guess we don't really have a solution for it. It's probably up to the trainers of each of those greyhounds that are the ones who decide where their greyhounds go. So if they're going to bypass, there's not much we can do about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with most of the points that you made. To be fair, it's really it's up to the participants. But the point you made, I guess, is it's obviously not a prize money based thing, because it's not just this MDC either. Think back a couple of years to the Adelaide Cup. Hooked on Scotch beat Seneca and Whiskey Riot. Now, they would have been 3 of the best 6 dogs in the country at that stage. So if they'd have been in the MDC, that series would have been a lot better for it. I agree with you that the Egg, the Australian Cup, the Melbourne Cup, and possibly the MDC need to sort of be maybe stand alone as much as possible. But I'm not sort of like everyone else that thinks that none of these races should overlap, because not every dog can go to every race, and we don't want it like that in any case. Pat, you got something else to add?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff's been spoken about for many years, but the whole staple around it, I think everyone agrees in principle about it, but the whole staple, the whole thing is, as long as the setup of the whole thing is that states and clubs sort of put races wherever they want, which is absolutely in their right, because that's their responsibility, you're going to get into these sort of positions. So none of it really gets to that stage where it's plonk that there, plonk that there, plonk that there, until it is nationally controlled, which I say is probably going to be unlikely long term.
All right, let's get into the dog diary. And again, it's going to have a massive $1 million chase focus with the Masters Medial Heats on Wednesday, along with the MDC Maiden Heats. As mentioned, on Thursday at Angle Park, we've got the Oaks and the Derby. Now, it's a double header at Wentworth Park over the weekend. Take note that the MDC semis are on the Friday as opposed to the Saturday, and on Sunday from Cannington, unusually, they'll have the WA Bred Championship. So it's another show. It should be Saturday? Okay, that should be Saturday. That'll wrap us up just about. Patch, what will you be looking forward to other than the Swans over the weekend?
Well, I don't think we've got any F1 on Wiz. That eliminates that, and especially me getting financially behind Ferrari again, which is just a terrible mistake. But Friday night's going to be great. I think there's a different feel to Friday night racing, especially when you typically race on a Thursday or Saturday. So I'm looking forward to getting up there with you and hearing the dulcet tones of Matty Jackson there at Wentworth Park. So, yeah, looking forward to it. And hopefully a replica of the weather that we saw last weekend up there, Wiz, because it was dead set perfect.
Yeah, got bad news for you, Patch. I think it's going to be raining.
I think the next couple of days is rain. I haven't looked as far ahead as the weekend, but yeah, it's one of the special nights of greyhound racing, the $1 million chase semis. It's just so cutthroat, and yeah, can't wait to be calling all the action there at Wenny, whilst having 2 eyes on the
footy, of course,
on the Cats, hopefully beating Brisbane, making a grand final.
All right. Well, that takes us away from the pen. As mentioned ad nauseum, join us Friday night in particular at Wentworth Park for the MDC semi-finals, and we'll see you back here next week.
Let's go!